The third dimension is not going to offer solutions to third dimensional problems. Those solutions have to come from a higher level of awareness. The part of you, the version of you that recognizes the problem, is not the same version of you that is going to solve the problem. Hey friends, it's Amar. Happy December. Can you believe that it is December already? This is your 2024 December Ascension Report. And while there may be a date or a time specifically attached to this video, as with all of my content, it's evergreen. And what that means is that it is relevant and important at any point in time. So if you are watching this video, this message is for you, regardless of when you are watching this video. You know, December is an interesting month energetically, and as always, my intention is to take the idea of ascension and make it practical, make it accessible, and make it real for you. In fact, that's what I do with all of my content, is really take these high-level, abstract, often confusing or sort of magical sounding spiritual concepts and experiences and distill them down into a practical, accessible perspective that helps you begin to apply them to your real life starting now. Because yes, you are an energetic, infinite being, but you are also, for this lifetime anyway, a human physical being. And it is important that we remember how to embrace all of that, the entirety of who we are. So, including your infinite, eternal, energetic nature within your physical, finite human experience, and understanding how to walk the line between the two and make your experience not only magical and otherworldly and energetic, but also real and practical and something that you can remember that you are in charge of, that you are the one driving the bus in co-creation with self and spirit. So what I have for you this month is a perspective that hopefully will help you make sense of what's going on in December. You know, December is an interesting month energetically because there is a lot that will be happening internally, but externally things might actually be pretty quiet. With the recent shift from Pluto into Aquarius, we had a whole lot of stuff going on. There were some really powerful astrological alignments, some moons that were really, really potent in their energy signature. And I think a lot of people felt like November was one where it was 1 minute it was here. I went through a really intense kind of upheaval or some chaos internally or even externally. And now all of a sudden it's done. And I think we're going to continue to see things accelerate rapidly. And the concept of time is going to become more and more fluid and less relevant because really time is just an illusion. Time doesn't really exist. We live in a cyclical reality and our experience is one that's a cyclical nature, but to mark it up into 24 hours or 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute, it's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily an accurate representation of the cycles and the rhythms of the natural divine world. Having said that, we live in a physical reality that for now anyway is governed by the markers of time and these units of time that we have created. So I think in many ways it's useful to look at it that way. And I always see an acceleration towards the end of the year. So for December, what that means is it is an opportunity for you to get really, really clear on some things internally and to understand and remember the truth that this is the primary reality. Your internal, energetic, emotional, intuitive, sort of non-physical or metaphysical world is the primary reality. And everything outside of you is the secondary reality. Everything outside of you is subject to your internal perception. Everything outside of you is temporary. And what is eternal is what is accessed within. You know, I've been sharing this phrase that my guides keep saying over and over and over. And essentially what they're saying is what you serve serves you in return. What that means is, in this context anyway, in terms of December's ascension energy, when you seek power outside of yourself, it is important to remember that that power is conditional. So when you believe that an authority or a system or a hierarchy outside of you is the source of power, that creates a very specific reality. And that reality is one that is conditional, one that it is temporary, and one where you are not necessarily empowered to be the sovereign authority of your life. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about conscious choice. It's about understanding what your beliefs create for you, because again, your beliefs from an internal perspective are what create and inform your external reality and what you experience in the world out here. So when you reclaim your inner source of power, you are liberated. If you serve that eternal divine force that emanates from within you, that creates a very specific type of reality. If you serve the temporary human-made structures of authority and hierarchy outside of you, then that creates a very specific type of reality. I think the big question for December and on, especially as we're moving into the depths of Pluto and Aquarius over the next 20 years, the big question is, what kind of reality do you want to experience? So again, the nature of our reality is cyclical. And with Pluto moving into Aquarius, there is a turning. There is a turning of a page. Just like the seasons go from spring to summer to fall to winter, every time that we move into a new season, a new cycle, a new part of the rhythm, there is a turning, there is an evolution, there is a shift or a change that happens. And with Pluto shifting into Aquarius, we are entering a phase where things really begin to turn, and we're going to continue to experience these big shifts in our energies and these big shifts in our internal perceptions, which of course will create shifts in our external world. And so beginning to get really, really clear on what you are rooted into is so important. If you are intending to move towards the upward spiral, if you are choosing to connect with what's in here and serve that, then this spin will propel you upward. If you are still focused on disempowerment, on chaos, on separation, on judgment and division, which is always a sign that you are connected to the external reality, which is really the egoic reality, then this spin will propel you further into that density. I'm seeing this a lot in readings. Right now, I'm doing my 2025 tarot forecasts, and pretty much across the board, everybody's getting the message that things are turning, things are shifting. That wheel of fortune, the wheel of life is turning in a big way. And depending on where you are focused and what you are rooted into, that is going to either propel you further upward or further downward in terms of the energies that you are connected to. I have an image that I want to share with you really quick to illustrate more what I'm talking about. So you can see this image on your screen, and this is a really, really simple way of looking at this. If you are moving into the upward spiral of reclamation of your authority, reclamation of your sovereignty, knowing yourself as the creator of your reality, this cycle and this turning is going to continue to propel you upwards into a higher bandwidth of frequency. Now, if you are choosing disempowerment, if you are choosing to give your authority away, if you are relying on an outside institution or force to take care of you or fix you or solve it or tell you what to do and where to go, then you are going to continue to propel yourself downward into a density that is a little bit more difficult to move through or more challenging to move through. Again, this isn't about right or wrong, good or bad. This is merely a matter of choice. So let's talk about solving problems, because I know that part of, I think, the conflict that people experience when we're talking about this idea of ascension or the new earth or these higher frequencies of reality, many people are saying, well, what about all the suffering? And what about all of the, the stuff that's happening to the planet, the stuff that's happening on the planet, the wars, the conflicts, our natural resources, all of the things that, tend to keep us up at night. Many people are being called in a really, really big way to stand for something. That is the call that is happening for all of humanity. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What do you invest yourself in, your energy, your time, your focus, your awareness, and your belief in terms of, again, what are you serving? What is important and meaningful to you? And this idea that somehow, oh, if I'm in the fifth dimension, there are no problems. And oh, I just don't have to worry about the other people who are suffering because their soul chose that experience and that's what their soul is going through. Yes, every being is living the result of the choices that their soul and their higher self have made for them in this lifetime. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't help people, or that if we're feeling called to help people, that we shouldn't. Many people are being called to stand for social justice, to stand as an earth guardian, to act for transformations in our old systems. Many people are being called to say, you know what, there's a lot of people who are here to put out the fires, and I'm actually being called to move beyond all of that and build the new thing so that when the fires go out, those people who are currently in conflict have somewhere to go. There's no right or wrong here. It's both and. But here is what is really important to understand when we're talking about solving problems. And there's something that I want to talk about really briefly, and that is the idea of intention and outcome. A creation can never escape its intention. And here's what I mean. If this pen is designed to be more profitable than it is effective, it can never be anything else but profitable first. This pen will be designed to break down, to run out of ink, to stop writing or stop working in some way before it stops being profitable, because a creation can never outlive its intention. If something, again, if something is intended to be more profitable than it is to be effective or useful, it can never be anything else other than that. So if we apply that idea to our systems in the world that we think are, that we've been told are here to take care of us, to, guide us, to manage us, to ensure that we have what we need, when those systems begin to fail, it's because it was designed to. Again, a system cannot outlive the intention that was the foundation of when it was created and what it was created for and by. So when you are looking for a solution and you find yourself frustrated or unable to find the answer, it is always a sign that you are looking at it from the wrong perspective. The third dimension is not going to offer solutions to third dimensional problems. It can't. The third dimension is a very specific, limited bandwidth of frequency that locks you in to a very specific way of being. And the only thing that will transform that third dimension, the only thing that will allow you to rise up, out, and above it, and to see it from a higher perspective, is to see it from a higher point of view. The third dimension is not going to offer solutions to third dimensional problems. Those solutions have to come from a higher level of awareness. The part of you, the version of you that recognizes the problem, is not the same version of you that is going to solve the problem. The solutions, the evolutions, the transformations, and the alchemy of individuals and society always comes from a higher perspective. Your spiritual awakening is triggered by a higher level of your awareness. Your ascension process is initially triggered by a higher level of your awareness, because when you're stuck in 3D and you're asleep, all you can see is 3D problems. All you can see is things from a 3D point of view, and the matrix is never going to give you solutions to solve the matrix. In order to solve the matrix and break free of it, you have to be able to look at it from a higher perspective, a higher point of view. So that is the answer to the question of, well, how do I solve all these problems? If I'm ascending, am I going to just leave them behind? No, you will still be able to observe the problems in the lower frequencies. And because the higher your resonance of your energy signature becomes, the more you are driven to be of service to those who need your help, your guidance, your assistance, your love, and your wisdom. So in order to solve a 3D problem, you need to have a 4D or a 5D perspective. Consciousness is in all things at all times simultaneously. So just because you may be physically embodied at, let's say, a third dimensional level, it does not mean that your consciousness, your energy, your awareness is not focused at a higher perspective. You can project yourself from higher levels of awareness into lower levels of awareness with no problem whatsoever. So if you are a third dimensional object, like a physical human, you project a two-dimensional shadow, right? Think about that. If you're walking down the street and the sun is shining, you look down and see your shadow, it's two-dimensional. So a 3D object projects a 2D shadow. A 4D object projects a 3D shadow. That's what shadow people are. That's a lot of how we perceive these interdimensional beings, is we see like, oh my God, there's, a spirit walking through the room that looks like a human figure. No, that's just a 3D shadow of a 4D being. A 5D being can project a 4D shadow, a 3D shadow, even a 2D shadow if it wants to. So just because you are at a higher frequency doesn't mean that you don't see the problems down there that need to be solved. What it means is you can project your consciousness from a higher perspective of reality into a lower density of reality and offer solutions, offer ways to heal it, to change it, to recreate it. Think about your spirit guide. Think about, angels. Think about higher beings that are here to help and assist us. They are projecting their consciousness and their awareness into a lower frequency reality, and that's how they assist. So just because you may be on the new earth or the ascension timeline doesn't mean that you don't have to help people. What it means is that if you want to solve a third dimensional problem, you need to come at it from a 4D or a 5D perspective in order to actually offer an effective solution. So now let's talk about problems that oftentimes feel really big or overwhelming. This is about seeing beneath the problem. All things are frequency and energy first. So let's say you're looking at a war. Let's say you're looking at a conflict somewhere on the planet and you're thinking, oh my God, this has been going on for centuries. How are we going to solve this? How are we going to fix this? This is too much for me to handle, too much for me to solve. One way that you can go about it is to break down the problem or the conflict into its component parts, into its ingredients. So, what is the conflict that you are currently looking at? What is it about? Is it about violence? Is it about greed? Is it about exclusion? Is it about religious persecution? Is it about denial? So, when you break it down into its component parts, then you have something that you can begin to work with. So, essentially, you say, okay, I'm not trying to fix a war. I'm trying to fix conflict. I'm trying to fix violence. I'm trying to fix separation and division, because the way I look at it is I could never perpetuate harm to another unless I am in some way perpetuating harm to myself. We can also apply this to something like, the planet, the state of the planet. If you're looking at what you would perceive as the climate crisis and you're saying, how do I solve this? This is so big. This is such a monumental problem, and I don't know how I, one person, can solve it. Again, break it down to its component parts. The way I perceive plundering of our natural resources is it's about separation. If I believe that I am somehow separate from nature, if I have this egoic perspective that tells me, oh, well, I am more powerful than nature, I am better than nature, I am somehow outside of nature and unaffected by nature, which is totally ridiculous. You are a part of that cycle just as much as the trees and the animals and the plants. So to believe for 1 second that you can divide or separate yourself from that is ludicrous, but I digress. The point here is that you look at the problem of natural resources being diminished or being, abused, and you say, okay, this is about division. This is about an egoic perspective that is projected onto the natural world. This is about greed. This is about a lack of accountability and a lack of responsibility. So then you start to work with greed and unaccountability or irresponsibility or separation and division. And you begin first by identifying where within yourself you still perceive those things or have those ideas active within you in some way. You start there and you let that take you to a higher perspective. You let that take you up the chain to your higher perspective and your higher self. And you project yourself from a frequency of, okay, if I'm looking at division, what is the opposite or what is the opposing polarity to division? Unification, connection, interdependency. This is where we can look at things as like the shadow and the light of something, right? It's two sides of the same coin. It's like chaos and order. Chaos and order are just two sides of the same coin. One is the light version of it and one is the shadow version of it. Neither is right or wrong. They both exist simultaneously in this duality world that we live in. And in order to shift that, in order to transcend that and free yourself from that division, you have to be able to put your arms around all of it to understand it from that higher perspective and say, okay, the antidote to division is unity. So I am going to walk into these spaces from a unified perspective. And that is the key, to vibrate at a frequency that just cancels out the problem, that cancels out the difficulty or the chaos. When you begin to vibrate, again, when you vibrate at a higher frequency within, that creates an experience outside of you where the paths to the higher frequencies are now open, and you can begin to connect yourself to higher and higher perspectives. And that's really how you begin to solve a problem. I shared this the other day, and I'm going to share it with you again here. Those who have chosen the path of physical ascension are being called to ground very deeply into their knowing. Those who have chosen the path of division are desperately looking for something outside of themselves to ground into. If I believe myself to be disempowered, if I believe myself to be powerless, what is the first thing I'm going to do? Look outside of me for somebody to tell me what to do, for somebody to say, oh, I am powerful, I can help you, I can solve it, I can fix it. That's simply not the way it works, but it again is your perspective that creates your reality. So the call to ground into something is something that all humans are hearing. And if I believe that I'm powerless, if I believe the person out there who says they're in charge of my city or my state or my country, if I believe that they are more powerful than me, then it is human nature for me to ground myself into them, either in acceptance or rejecting them, because acceptance and rejection are two sides of the same coin. I can only reject you or try to reject you if I believe that you are more powerful than I am. I can only accept you and exalt you and give my authority to you if I believe that you are more powerful than I am. So it doesn't matter whether you love someone or hate them. If you believe them to be more powerful than you are going to plug yourself into them and perceive them as a source of authority or power outside of you. But when you understand that you are the authority, when you understand that you are the sovereign, when you understand and remember that your internal perception is what creates your external experience, then you remember, yeah, okay, I see that person out there telling me that they're powerful, telling me that they're in charge of me, or telling me that they're out to get me. Okay, they can talk. They can say all those things. Doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. And it doesn't mean I allow them to be an authority figure. I can perceive that it's raining. I can walk in the rain and I can still get wet, but it doesn't mean that it dictates my experience internally, what I think about myself, what I believe about myself, and how I perceive myself moving through the world and what I believe is possible. Consciousness resides in all things at all levels simultaneously. And as you begin to plant yourself and root yourself into higher levels of perspective, slowly but surely, that becomes your center of location. That becomes your center of gravity. As you continue to perceive the truth of who and what you are and live from that place, that perspective of yourself from a higher dimension or a higher level of awareness continues to gain momentum. It continues to grow larger and create more gravity in your reality. And ultimately, that's what begins to shed the layers of your physical density, allowing you to reach higher planes of awareness. So you can still be in physical form and primarily reside in a non-physical or metaphysical plane. So I can still be walking around in a body that people would perceive as a third dimensional emanation, but the majority of me is running and operating and perceiving itself from a higher level of awareness. It's most importantly, above all other things, it's really about understanding where your awareness lies. If you believe that you are still mostly physical and are stuck in density, then you will be. By default, you will defer to your physical experience. You will believe that the things outside of you and around you in your physical world have more power over you than you have power within. And when you understand that you are primarily an energetic being who has focused itself by choice into a physical density, then you understand the truth that your physical experience out here can be reshaped and reformed according to your internal experience. This is the primary reality. This is the secondary reality. It is universal law. All is mind. Everything, beginning, middle, and end, is primarily, first and foremost, a mental perspective and a mental projection. Physical density, this body, this pen, this laptop that I'm currently speaking to you through, it is not actually solid. Light is a particle and a wave. Physicality, this world outside of us that we can touch, taste, feel, smell, and hear, it is mostly a manifestation of collectively agreed upon beliefs. In truth, even things that appear solid aren't actually solid. It's simply light that has been slowed way, way down, because light is both a particle and a wave. And if I were to look at this pen underneath a microscope, what we would see, the truth is that there is more empty space within this pen than there is physical matter. Ultimately, in the end, it is a matter of what you believe yourself to be. If you're interested in exploring more of these concepts and working more with your higher perspectives and plugging into that new Earth timeline, I have an event coming up on December 8th that is going to be focused exactly on that, called Your New Earth Timeline. It's going to be 2 hours of channeled insight, of question and answer, community connection time, and also some really, really powerful group energy work. I would love for you to join me. The information will be in the description box below. Have a fabulous December. Thank you for watching. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.